All right, so we're gonna take a look at how we can use some percents to make some estimates. Okay, so when you're out and about in the real world and you're looking at like a sale or something, or trying to figure out tax or a tip, a lot of times you're not gonna probably calculate the exact. You want to be able to kind of mentally get kind of an estimate of what that percent's going to be. So there's a couple strategies you can use. Um, the first one, you can kind of think of percents and their fraction equivalents. So I've got a table there of some different fractions and their equivalents. Some of these are probably ones you'll use more than others. So I'll kind of maybe highlight a couple here. I think probably the most useful one and the easiest one to use with a fraction is 50%. 50% means a half, right? A half's an easy calculation to do because you're simply dividing by 2. Okay. 1/4 would be another one, 25%. When you want to find 25% of something, it's simply dividing it by 4. If it's close to 33 1/3%, that's a third, right? 20% is a fifth. So anything where like 1 is the numerator, it's an easy calculation because you can divide just by that denominator, right? 1/5 we can just divide by 5. 1/4 we can divide by 4. So when we want to estimate, first we're going to do some rounding to make numbers work together, right? Sometimes when we learn rounding, we learn round to the nearest with percents and things like that. We kind of round to the nicest, meaning numbers that are going to work well together. Okay, so let's look at the example here. It says estimate 27% of 123, right? So as I'm looking at my list, 27% I know is really close to 25%. So I'm going to use 1/4 as my estimate for 27%. So we're just looking for a fraction that's close to that. Okay, so we can see that there on the second line. 27 is about 25%, which is equivalent to 1/4, right? Now, when I think about my other number, it has to be easily divisible by 4. So if I think about 123, okay, it starts with 12. I know 12 is divisible by 4, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to change the 3 into a 0, and I'm going to make that 120. So essentially what I'm thinking about is what's 1/4 of 120. So I've rounded my number to make it easy to go with the fraction. Okay. I could do 124, but again, I'm just trying to get an estimate. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible. So we're just going to stick with 120 here. So 4 goes into 12 3 times. 12 divided by 4 is 3. And then since it's 120, I just put that 0 on the end. Okay. So I get an estimate there of about 30. It's not the exact, but it'd give us close, right? Okay. Let's do another example here. Let me scroll down a little bit. Let's say we were doing, I wanted to find 32% of, say, 94. Okay. Well, if I go back and look at my chart here, 32%, that's close to 33 1/3%, which is a third. So I'm going to use a third as my estimate. All right, so I've got a third there. And then think of 3, right? I know 3 goes into 9, so I'm just going to round that to an easy. So I'm just going to round that down to 90. Okay. Again, I could go 93 or up to 96, but I'm going to make it easy on myself. I'm just going to make it 90 because I know 90 is divisible by 3 because 9 is divisible by 3. So then I just have to do a third of 90, which is just 90 divided by 3. And I know 9 divided by 3 is 3. I just have to put that 0 on there. 90 divided by 3 is 30. So that would be my estimate. Okay. So sometimes we can just use fraction equivalents to help us with that. And again, the goal is to make the numbers work nicely together. So when you're thinking about rounding that second number, right, look for a number that's close to it, obviously, but that works nicely with the fraction that you picked. Okay. All right. Now, let me erase this here quick. The other way we can do it is we can use some different percentages that are easier to calculate. So to me, the key one here is 10%, okay? Because 10% is an easy calculation. I'll show that here in a second. But if I know 10%, I can get 20, I can get 30, I could get 40, I could get 5% because that's half of 10. So 10% is an easy one to calculate, okay? When we get 10% of something, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's try that again. Okay. 10% equals a tenth, right? And a tenth of something is the same as dividing by 10, right? And dividing by 10 is super easy because all we have to do is move a decimal point over, okay? So 320 would become 32 if I had like 365 and I divided that by 10. Move that decimal point over. Sometimes we learn we drop the 0, which if it ends in 0, that's true, but we're really just moving that decimal point over. Okay? So finding a tenth of something is pretty simple because we're just moving a decimal. There's no real calculations we have to do. Okay? So let's say, let me clear this off here. I was doing something. Let's say I wanted to find 9% of 32. Just trying to estimate that. Okay? Well, 10%, and I'm going to round that to 30 just to make it easy to work with. Okay, 10% of 30 is pretty simple. Again, to find 10% of something, we move the decimal point left one place because it's like dividing by 10. Okay, so I'm just going to move it left one place. So 10% of 30 would be 3. So that would be a good estimate of 9% of 32. Now, the cool thing about 10% is once you know that, you can do a lot of different things. Let's say I was trying, instead of 10%, I was trying to find 30%. Right, and here's where these proportional relationships come in. Okay. Since 10% times 3 gives me 30%, I simply have to do that times 3. So if I wanted to figure out 30% of 30, I'd first figure out, well, 10% of 30 is 3, and 30% is just that 3 times. So 3 times 3 would be 9. Let's say I wanted to do 60%. Okay, well, that's just times 6, right? 10% times 6. So I could take 3 times 6. I apologize, it's getting a little jumbled there, but and that would give me 18. So 10%, lets you do a lot of different things. 10% lets you do a lot of different things. You can also, if I know 10%, find 5%. Because 5 is just half of 10. Give myself some space here. So let's say I want to find 5% of 32. Again, I'm going to round that to 30. So what I can do here is first start out by 10%, which is simply 3, right? And 5% is half of that. It's dividing by 2, so I can do the same thing here. Okay. So 5% would be 1.5. If I wanted to do 15%, I think I could add those two things together, 5% and 10%, give me 15%. 2 and 1.5 get 3.5. So there's lots of different things you could do with 5%. I'm sorry, with 10%. Right? You can find 5, you can find 20, 30, 40, any multiple of 10. Okay, so 10% is kind of an important one to kind of work with because it'll let you do a lot of different things. Okay, all right, the last one I'll share with you from that table there before was 1%. Let me give myself some space here again. There we go. All right, so if we look at, where's that random line? 1%. Okay, 1% of a number, okay, is 100th. 1% is 100th. So when we get 100th of something, it's like dividing by 100 or multiplying by 100th. We move the decimal point 2 places to the left. Okay, so if I wanted to find 1% of 350, I'd move that decimal point 2 places to the left, 3.5, because I'm getting 100th of it. Now, if I know 1%, I can find 3%, right? It's kind of like what we did with the 10. Right? That's times 3. So I could take that times 3. Okay, that'd be 10.5. So there's lots of different things you can do if you know 1%. Okay, 10% is super handy, like I pointed out. 1% can come in handy, and you can always use those fraction equivalents if those are easy to use. Sometimes they're a little bit easier than others, but you know, things like half, fourth, thirds, using those fraction equivalents are a good thing to use as well. So again, we're just estimating, trying to get some nice numbers that work together. I don't know why Word thinks that's a misspelled word, but so if you need to use the table a little bit, right? But again, if you get stuck, right, think about, especially a lot of the problems we'll work on, can I start with 10% and get there, right? If you're like, I don't know how to do 40%, start with 10, right? 10 times 4 is 40. So a lot of times that's going to kind of help you out with those. All right?